11 animalistic and terrifying villains of Thundercats. Backstories explained. Many of you probably wouldn't consider Thundercats to be among the best of 80s cartoon shows. We don't blame you for your judgment, because this show was not as popular as Masters of the Universe and lacked the finesse of big-budget Marvel, Hasbro, and Sunbow productions. In 2011, the series was revived for a brief duration, but it was cancelled pretty quickly due to the dismal state of toy sales. We have our share of nostalgia for the good old 80s version of the show that enjoyed a fairly successful run from 1985 to 1989. Over the years, Thundercats has developed a beloved fandom, and people have appreciated the relevance of the content even for adults. For those of you who are unaware of the premise, it is about a feline-like humanoid species called Thundercats, who had fled their planet and landed on Third Earth. They tried to make it to their home, but their arch enemies follow, and it all boils down to a final showdown. We had some entertaining villains here, and in this video, we will look into the deadliest ones of the lot. Cheers to all of you whose lives have a sentimental space for shows like Thundercats that made our childhood so special.
Before we get into the explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
From this decayed form to Mumm-Ra.
Mumm-Ra. Mumm-Ra has to be the meanest of all the featured antagonists, a mummified demon priest with the power of immortality. He has one of the creepiest appearances that you will find in a children's cereal. He had these brightish red eyes and crooked, jagged teeth, accompanied by dull grayish skin. Mumm-Ra looks pure evil in his red cape, and the mummification of his body means that he is wrapped around in bandages. He might walk with a slight hunch and look frail, but make no mistake, he is one of the toughest adversaries of the Thundercats. His name, appearance, and various other aspects of his character point to an Egyptian origin. In fact, he is shown to live inside the Black Pyramid that looks like the ruins of the ancient Egyptian civilization. He is mostly seen resting inside the tomb and replenishes his energy for upcoming battles. There is a magical pool of bubbling pink water in front of his resting place. And his main power resides in the 4 statues that guard his tomb. These statues are home to the ancient forces of evil, and they have unlimited power. Mumm-Ra considers these to be his masters, and tries to keep them happy. He also has his trusted pet, the demonic bulldog named Mammut, who is loyal to his master and obeys every command. He has a magical chant that transforms his frail old body into a muscular, 9-foot-tall giant.
I grew 4 times as big.
His powers are insane, and he can use magic spells or simply shoot energy bolts from his hands and eyes. He has shape-shifting skills as well as the ability to fly around in this state. The problem is that he cannot remain in this state for too long because it constantly drains his energy. A deadlier form of Mumm-Ra is seen when he absorbs the powers of the ancient spirits and grows much bigger. He has dreams of ruling over the Third Earth, and the arrival of the Thundercats dented his ambitions. He is determined to eliminate them and wants to secure the precious Eye of Thundera from their possession. He has his force of mutants and other villainous characters who do the fighting for him, but there have been times when he fought the Thundercats himself. The show wouldn't have been half as brilliant without this invincible being as the constant threat to the heroes. The character was voiced by Earl Hammond, who ensured that the vicious nature of this adversary was clear from the mannerisms.
Thundercats, Grune the Destroyer has come for his revenge.
Grune the Destroyer. Do you remember the anamorphic saber-toothed tiger in the show? That was none other than Grune the Destroyer, once a Thundercat and close friend of Jaga. His greed and lust for power turned him evil. He gathered a force to fight the Thundercats, but Jaga proved to be too strong for him. He was banished from Thundera, and he made it to the Third Earth, where he wreaked havoc. After his death, a magical spell was cast over his tomb and prevented his spirit from escaping. However, when this symbol was broken, he was free once again. Grune is determined to have his revenge on Jagga and the entire race of Thundercats. Grune headed for the Fire Rock Mountain to gather the Fire Rocks, or Thunderium, and he used it to forge his spiked mace. When he attacked the Thundercats, they had no clue how to fight a powerful ghost and summoned another ghost, Jagga. The two friends turned foe battled once more, but this time, Grune was empowered by the Thunderanium mace. However, Jagga found a way to defeat him using the Sword of Omens and a little help from Lion-O. It has been proven time and again that Grune is quite a handy warrior. His combat skills are incredible, and he is comfortable with almost every weapon. His strength and agility of a Thundercat are very useful in fights, and he gained the ability to turn invisible following his resurrection. Another striking feature about Grune is that despite his origin as a Thundercat, he is not affected by Thunderanium, which weakens all the others. He could have been way more powerful if he wasn't weighed down by his extreme greed and power-hungry nature. This lets his emotions control his actions, and the heroes use that against him.
Time has come.
Vultureman. Vultureman looks exactly as his name suggests, a humanoid vulture. He was one of the mutants, the barbaric race that waged wars against the Thundercats on Thundera and Third Earth. Vultureman had pale purple skin, and his large beak on the face separated him from the others. We usually see him in a short dark blue kilt, and his beefed up presence is quite intimidating. We first saw Vultureman piloting the flying machine on Third Earth, being commanded by Slithe.
Attack! We'll never have a better chance!
He had a face-off with Snow Meow, but the latter proved to be too much for Vultureman to deal with. He suffered great damage and was forced to take evasive action.
Easier said than done. The Snowcats damaged our control.
This is one ambitious villain who is more interested in getting the work done via alliances. We have seen him time and again teaming up with the other enemies of the Thundercats. He had paired up with the Lunataks, and there have been times where he dealt with Mumm-Ra personally.
Mumm-Ra, allow me to introduce you to the robot wolf.
The way he can break the ranks at ease shows his ambitious side. It is safe to say that Vultureman is the brains behind the mutants' operation. He is skilled in handling mechanical, electrical, and chemical problems, and is easily the most intelligent member among the mutants. He is also lethal as a pilot in the flying machine, and we have seen him as the chief inventor coming up with useful tools to tackle the enemy. He might be an opportunist of the finest order, but this evil genius has tormented the Thundercats quite often. Initially, the character was voiced by Bob McFadden, but soon the legendary Earl Hammond took over. Since not much is spoken about his species, he remains a mysterious entity throughout the series. Monkian. You probably have a good memory of this well-built monkey mutant, who was the leader of the Monkians on the planet Plundar. He was just another member of the evil mutants, but a powerful one to say the least. He was initially paired with the likes of Slithe, Jackalman, and their armies on the mutant mothership. After the fall of Thundera, they were all after the royal flagship to gain the Eye of Thundera. That was in the hilt of the Sword of Omens. They managed to defeat all of the Thunderan ships and held the royal flagship with grappling rays.
What's that?
Grappling rays.
They launched an intense search for the Eye of Thundera, but when the ship crash landed on Third Earth, Lion-O led the other Thundercats to defeat their forces.
Back! Teleport yourselves back to the ships!
The giant humanoid monkey had white fur and tan skin. He wore a comically spiked helmet, but something about his expressions made him fairly menacing. While he is not one to pick fights with the other mutants, there is a hint of rebellion in his interactions with Slithe. There are moments in the show that suggest that Monkian wouldn't hesitate to put Slithe back in his place for his advantage. However, while he wasn't too fond of Slithe as the leader, he still preferred him to Ratar-O. He is quite a potent force. But there have been times when his ignorance hindered the chances of the mutants to defeat the Thundercats. Sometimes he is hyperactive, and there is clearly a jokey side to his character as well. Monkian is not the smartest among the mutants, but he is a jolly good spy and gathers useful information about the Thundercats. His sources are almost always reliable, and it helps the mutants plan their attacks. His fighting skills are nothing remarkable, but he is quite effective with his chain flail and ball. Overall, Monkian was a fun villain. 1 part badass personality, 1 part comedy. Slithe. Slithe was the leader the mutants feared and respected, and this mighty villain could order the likes of Vultureman and Monkian. Initially, he was on Plundar, trying to get a copy of the plans for the Plundar war robot. But when the planet was destroyed, he assumed that the copy met with the same fate. When the Thundercats crash-landed on the Third Earth, he assembled the armies to look for the magical sword. It was at this time that Lion-O gathered the other Thundercats to put up a brave fight. Slithe is always seen to be more strategic than emotional, and when he saw that they were losing, he quickly decided to retreat.
Back! Get back!
Slithe is easily identifiable among the other reptilians because of his strange ears, and his stocky build makes him stand out as the leader. His powerful, muscular tail could deliver quite a lethal blow, and knock out the enemy. Slithe is not the most sophisticated baddie that you will find, but he is certainly among the most cunning ones. You will see his shrewd plans changing as necessary, and the only problem he has is the lack of patience that affects his success. He has leadership skills, but he is ruthless and shows no sign of remorse. His arrogance also becomes his weakness at times, and there are moments when we see him getting a bit too confident.
On the screen.
Impossible!
Slithe doesn't mince his words or sarcasm when he is insulting his own teammates for their failure. In fact, the dry humor is a characteristic that we have loved.
Power of the Doomsday is with you.
Tashi. The list of villains wouldn't be complete without the presence of an enchantress. Tashi, precisely that. An ancient princess who was imprisoned in the Time Warp prison.
But I am trapped in the Time Warp prison.
One of her special powers is that of her effective doom gaze. This stuns her male opponent, who are smitten with her beauty, and they end up being in an enslaved state for her. Nemesis, the evil spirit, had instructed Mumm-Ra to use her to fight the Thundercats.
Summon the Princess Tashi.
But if Mumm-Ra had to free her from her prison, he required some special items, including a hero who would substitute her in her prison. Mumm-Ra thought of Lion-O to be the replacement. Once Mumm-Ra managed to free her, Tashi won him half the battle without much trouble. She immediately mesmerized the male Thundercats, and they were helpless under her spell. It required something special to stop her, and Cheetara stepped in. Since she was a woman, Tashi's spells didn't work on her, and she finally managed to send her back to the Time Warp prison. Thundercats was a children's show, but Tashi was a sight for sore eyes, and could make the men go weak in their knees. Ratar-O. He was briefly a leader of the mutants, but one of the most hated ones. The likes of Monkian preferred Slithe over him, and that is saying something because they don't like Slithe that much either. One of the worst things about him was the way he treated his inferiors. He was a dictatorial ruler who subjected his followers to extreme oppression. There was a time when he made Slithe work for him as a cook. He orders the mutants, but doesn't really trust anybody unless it's absolutely necessary. So, is this arrogant and domineering leader all bad? Not really, because Ratar-O could be quite a handy commander. There have been times when he proved his credentials in the fight against the Thundercats. While most of his subjects hated him, there was one that served him loyally. That was Vultureman, who was his biggest supporter and the co-pilot in the commander's vehicle, the Ratstar. He is a deadly opponent with his weapons, the daggers called the Rat's Eye. Ratar-O also has the power of flight, courtesy of boosters in his shoes.
Welcome. I am Captain Shiner.
Captain Shiner. This mercenary for hire was certainly one of the weirdest looking villains in the series. He was the captain of a spaceship named the Virtus, and we mostly see him with a monocle over his left eye. His German accent is quite distinctive, and his facial features somewhat resemble a dog. We usually see him being hired by the mighty Mumm-Ra, but Captain Shiner also has his own set of principles. It is probably this reason that he helped his so-called enemies like Lion-O, Snarf, and Panthro to escape into a black hole when they needed it. There have been a few occasions in the show when Captain Shiner was seen catering to Mumm-Ra's orders. He would do just about anything for the right price. But you couldn't quite say that he was inherently evil. His bulldog-like face might seem a tad funny, but his crew has huge respect for his skills. His highly advanced armored ship has special advancements that allow him to travel great distances in the blink of an eye. A conflicted character always makes for a great villain, and Captain Shiner was one of our favorites.
I'm going to get my own army together, and I'll be the general. General Jackalman.
Jackalman. Jackalman was one of the most prominent members of the group of the evil mutants. He led the Jackalmen from Pundar and served under Slithe during their operation on the mutant mothership when they were chasing the royal flagship to gain possession of the Eye of Thundera. Jackalman got on board to look for it and found it with Snarf and Lion-O. He dealt with Snarf, but when the Sword of Thundera came to life, he fled along with Slithe. Later, after the mothership crashed on the third Earth, he came to try out his luck one more time to find the Eye of Thundera. Jackalman has some interesting storylines in the comic continuity, and despite being the scrawniest of the mutants, he is quite handy in fights.
At least you won't either.
His size helps him to be part of some missions that the bigger ones cannot complete. Although, Jackalman is usually obedient, when the chance comes to gain greater power, all his ethics fly out the window. In that case, he does not hesitate to rebel against his own kind and betray his allegiances.
No!
This character has been given some of the funniest lines in the show, and this humorous touch makes him a likable villain. He is shown to be cautious in his moves, and does not blindly follow orders without judging their viability. Jackalman is not afraid of being called a coward, but safety comes first for him at all times. We enjoyed this loudmouth, funny enemy who taught us that it is better to be safe than sorry.
See how well we work together. Teamwork is what counts.
The Lunataks. The Lunataks consist of a group of deadly alien warriors who reside in the moons of the planet Plundar. They once planned to overthrow the mighty Mumm-Ra on Third Earth. He prevailed over the Lunataks, but the soldiers earned the respect of the fans over the years. Even Lion-O went on to say that whatever the Thundercats can do, the Lunataks can do better. The problem is their inability to work together as a team. The Thundercats exploited this weakness and got the better of them eventually. The 6 Lunataks are namely Luna, Allura, Amok, Chilla, Red-Eye, and Tugmug. Luna serves as the leader and the chief strategist, as well as being a diminutive sorceress. She has a small and tiny form, but her cruel and vicious nature makes her command the Lunataks with an iron fist. The ambitions of the other Lunataks cause a few problems at times, and her authoritative leadership does nothing to solve such issues. Allura is skilled in deceiving the enemy and playing mind games. This master of psychological warfare takes pleasure in all forms of mental cruelty.
They call me Allura. Now, put the nunchucks down.
Chilla is a unique member of the Lunataks group, and her powers to control heat and cold enable her to freeze a target or burn it down. She is quite spiteful and often causes a lot of damage willingly.
Mutants never were a match for Lunataks.
Red-Eye is a hulking brute with enhanced vision, and he can see things in infrared. This ability allows him to detect the presence of Thundercats. even Tigra, who can be invisible. He is a loyal supporter of Luna, unlike some of the others. Tugmug is used to very strong gravitational forces, and in the lesser gravity of the Third Earth, he is a formidable opponent. His tripod legs allow him to hop for great distances, and he is so strong that he once ripped off the blade of the Sword of Omen with his bare hands. Together, they all form a formidable force that requires something special from the Thundercats to be defeated. Safari Joe. Now that you have seen so many different kinds of antagonists, how about an intergalactic assassin? Safari Joe is a big game hunter who stalks his prey alongside his robot assistant called Mule. He moves around the galaxy in search of suitable and formidable prey that can challenge him. It is the chance of finding prey that drew him to the Third Earth. And he wasn't disappointed. One by one, he hunted down the Thundercats and captured most of them, exploiting their weaknesses. He always went for his hunts with proper information about his targets, including their strengths and weaknesses.
Weaknesses? Panthro fears bats.
From Wily Cat to Cheetara to Tigra, they all fell to him before he was finally defeated. He had a gigantic, intimidating frame with his tall stature and bald head. He had an impactful mustache that added the perfect villainous touch to his face. Safari Joe is not a man of ethics and doesn't have a speck of sportsmanship in him. There were times when he gave his word only to do something completely different in no time. He excelled in technology, with his spaceship capable of setting up an electronic blind that made it undetectable. Besides these, he has a powerful Gatling gun that could be used to take down mighty foes. However, he is too reliant on his weapons. Without them, he is a coward who tries to hide behind false bravado. The Thundercats used Mule to monitor him after the big game hunter left Third Earth peacefully.
And Mule, you'll make sure he keeps this promise.
Yes, Panthro.
Such a unique villain did not go unnoticed by Mumm-Ra, and he used a clone to try and kill Lion-O.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.